The No Nonsense Roundtable. It's a weekly show broadcast on Rochester, New York's 50,000-watt iHeart radio station, News Radio Wham 1180. The host, Dom Geneva, interviews guests from all walks of life, all with amazing stories to tell. What you are about to hear is a recording of a previous broadcast without the breaks and commercials. Now, here's host Dom Geneva.
Well, welcome everybody to another edition of the No Nonsense Roundtable. I'm Dom Geneva, your host, every Saturday right here at 10 o'clock. And if the show is about people you know and people you don't know, I have a guitarist, musician, blues player with me today. His name is Davy Knowles, and Davy will be playing at Jim Shelley's Fanatics Pub. Davy, I've actually renamed Jim's place. It's Fanatics Pubs and Blues Stage because it's more than a pub. I mean, you sound like you're from the UK or from that part of the country, so a pub there is a little bit different than a pub here.
Sure. Yeah, but I agree with you. I mean, it's become such an amazing venue for this style of music, for a lot of styles of music, and it's got that warm, cozy vibe that you need.
Oh, it really does. I mean, you can really relate to the audience. The food's good. I mean, it's humble. I can't say enough good things about Jim and his stage there.
Absolutely.
But Dave, you're going to be there on the 15th and the 16th. I mean, I'm looking at the tickets. The tickets are almost sold out. And I tell you, that has a lot to do, I guess, with your reputation. But let me just start off with something. I have interviewed Carl Palmer from London. I've interviewed Gene Cornish, and he lives in New York now. I've interviewed Jack Alaco, who's an Emmy Award winner, and he's from L.A. You are the first person I have from the Isle of Mann.
Yeah, not many of us.
No.
Yeah.
Tell us about the Isle of Man.
Sure.
I mean, we are so ignorant here in the United States. We have no idea where that is.
Look, if you ask the average Manx person to point out where Idaho is, we'd have trouble. So please don't worry about that. No, the Isle of Man is really a separate country in between England and Ireland, in the Irish Sea up north, just slightly south of Scotland, right in that kind of pocket in the middle there. And we're our own nation. The king, I guess, is still head of state, much like he is in Canada, but without any kind of pull really too much. And we have our own government, have our own currency. It's a version of pound sterling, which is quite inconvenient in that nowhere else takes it. So, but no, we're our own little country right in the middle of the Irish Sea.
Well, how many people live in the Isle of Man?
Oh gosh, well, it's had quite a bit of a boom in recent years. When I was growing up, it was about 50,000-60,000, and now I think it's more like 80,000-90,000, something around there.
Oh my God! That's like half of Staten Island here.
Yeah, and I mean the whole place is only 30 miles by 12, something like that.
Oh my Lord! I mean, when you're a young boy, you do something naughty, everybody knows about it.
Oh, you can't get away with anything. Yeah.
Well, one of the questions I love asking people, I ask it all the time, is that what did you want to do when you were a young boy? I mean, people have had straight paths in lives where they picked up a guitar when they were 5 or 11 or something like that, and some people pick it up later or have a turn in their lives. How about you? You sound like a typical I picked it up as soon as I was born thing.
Well, I was 11, and yeah, it was pretty much game over from then. That's all I really wanted to do. And it was Mark Knopfler from Dire Straits. My dad played me Sultans of Swing, and that was kind of wanted to go out and buy a headband, and just become Mark Knopfler. That was the goal. Kind of still is the goal, really. But I got bitten pretty hard there. But prior to that, it was a lot of music in the house. My dad played guitar. I have an older sister who's a big music fan, just a great encyclopedia of music. And so there was always music playing, and I fell in love with it very, very young. Singing, first of all, and Billy Joel was the first record I ever bought, An Innocent Man. And so from kind of as long as I can remember, I always had some sort of connection to music.
Well, now, did the other people in your family, did they play instruments, or are they just interested in music?
My dad did. My dad played guitar as a hobby. He was a folkie. He loved English folk music. People like Bert Jansch, John Renbourn, and Richard Thompson, and folks like that. But he also liked the kind of 60s English blues boom, like Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac, or Rory Gallagher, John Mayall, folks like that. And then my sister was big into, she didn't play anything, but she's just a huge fan of music. And so the Laurel Canyon scene was her thing for a long time, Joni Mitchell and Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and stuff like that. So yeah, I think between those two, I got a really good musical education.
So you must have had some other mentors in your life when you were young. I mean, talk to me about who had a lot of influence for you.
Well, I mean, the great thing about the small community I grew up in was it was very easy to find like-minded individuals, and it was a very welcoming kind of scene, the music scene, and a tremendous amount of music for such a small place. And I think, we were talking about pubs. Back then, things were a little bit more relaxed. So, I was playing in the pubs from 13, 14 years old. And it was great. There were so many folks that helped me. I was playing in a blues band at my dad's age, a chap called Dickie Best, Dave Moore, and those two really kind of helped me no end. And then I got a gig playing guitar probably when I was about 15, 16 behind a songwriter on the Isle of Man, Barry Nelson, and his wife. And I'm still really good friends with all these folks. And yeah, I mean, I subscribe to the thinking that no one is self-taught. I think that's a total misnomer. And whether you had any formal lessons or not, you've always had people who were willing to show you, help you, and that kind of selflessness is vital.
Well, it's funny because Paul Simon has that line. He says, "I was underage in some funky bar, and they went outside to smoke a J." And every time I talk to musicians who started really young, that seems to be the common thread. You started before you could drink, although I don't know what the drinking age is in the Isle of Man.
Yes, it's pretty relaxed. Yeah.
Is there a police department in the Isle of Man?
There is, yeah. And generally the kind of consensus when I was growing up was if you weren't causing any trouble, you were fine. The moment you made a fool of yourself, then that was it for you. But yeah, it was pretty laid back, really. Okay,
so we're about ready to head to a break, and right after we come out of this break, we're going to get you off the Isle of Man to someplace else, because I'm going to ask you a little bit about playing music on the Isle of Man. This segment of the No Nonsense Roundtable is brought to you by McClure, Chrysler, Dodge, Jeep, Ram, Chevy, and Buick in Perry. Hey, all new car dealers pay the same price for their new cars and trucks. There's no volume discount. So your buying decision now comes down to price and ease of doing business. Family owned for generations, you'll find John McClure himself there in the dealerships day to day, and you get a great no-nonsense deal you'll be hard-pressed to find anywhere else. Contact them at McClure-ChryslerDodgeJeep.com or simply go to NoNonsenseRoundtable.com to connect with them. This is Dom Genova for my friends at Valley Fuel. It was decades ago that Phil Saunders called me up and said he was starting a new company, Valley Fuel. And man, I got to tell you, this has been a great experience. If you're looking for affordable propane or home heating oil, contact Valley Fuel. If you want reliable delivery, contact Valley Fuel. If you want to do business with a local company, contact Valley Fuel. If you want to find out how to contact Valley Fuel, go to valleyfuels.com or your No Nonsense Roundtable. Well, welcome back. You're listening to the No Nonsense Roundtable. We are having a wonderful conversation with Davy Knowles, the only fellow I have met so far from the Isle of Man. And he's going to be playing at the wonderful Fanatics Blues Pub and stage in Lima on the 15th and the 16th of this month. A great place, nice little intimate place. I love it. I love Jim Shelley. He's just such a great guy. And he has the amount of talent that he has coming through there, Davy, is just amazing.
Yeah, it really is. But it's a reflection of him, isn't it? He's such a great guy.
Well, yeah, the people that kind of get it and people that really get it, he really gets it. He provides, well, you know what it is? He makes it really comfortable and really interesting, and it's not too big and it's not so small, and you get to know them. A lot of people that go there, a lot of people that perform there tell me that they like the intimacy of the audience because it only holds 100 people. I mean, but if you're in the business, most musicians, I'm sure you can concur with this. I mean, you get a little charge out of that, being able to, really relate to an audience, right?
Oh yeah, well that's what it's about, isn't it? And it's much easier to do that when they're right in front of you than if they look like a little sea of cardboard cutouts. It's difficult to get something back from that.
Yeah. One musician, I'm not going to mention who it is, says I go out into the audience and I pick the guy who I think hates me. And I tried to get him over on I won't say who because he's going to come back someday, okay? So he says, I do that. He says, and if I can get that guy over to my side, he says, I got the rest of everybody else. So,
I've got the task of trying to narrow that down, I think, before we get to the one person.
Your accent helps because everybody in the United States, the Beatles did this way back when. Everybody that has a British English accent, we automatically think that you are nicer and you're more intelligent than we are.
Dear.
No, seriously. When they do an ad for a luxury car, it sounds like Sir Paul. I mean, it's like okay, so that makes it more important, and we can charge more money. But enough of this tomfoolery. So on the Isle of Man, I mean, it's not that big of a place. So I mean, are there people that can play music there and actually make a living and not have another job? I mean, that's got to be. I mean, seriously, that's a very small place.
It is, but yeah, you'd be surprised. There are some fabulous musicians there, a lot of musicians in the trad world that based there that will travel all over the world playing traditional music. So yeah, I mean, there is an extra obstacle in that travel on and off the Isle of Man is difficult, but no, there are folks out there who do this for a living and maybe kind of supplement stuff with education, with teaching and what have you. But no, there are some real tremendous musicians that do make a living out of it.
Well, and let me ask you a question. I'm looking through your, I think it's the wiki page or whatever, and say blues rock. I understand blues rock. I understand. The Chitlin circuit that they had here in, or maybe they still have here in the United States. Now, is the word Celtic or Celtic? A rock?
Celtic.
It's like we call the sports teams the Celtic. Well, we call Notre Dame as should we Notre Dame. We call the team Notre Dame. But explain the difference between that and the Celtic rock.
Well, really. I guess what I would be referring to in that instance would be more at the inflection of it when you're playing guitar. And I think this is really one of my big influences is a guy called Rory Gallagher, who was an Irish, predominantly blues rock guitar player. But when he played certain phrases, the timing of them and the kind of personality of them really reminded me of a jig or a reel, like a fiddle tune. And so, it's where this kind of traditional meets exotic, because growing up, listening to Muddy Waters or Howlin' Wolf or Freddie King or any of this stuff just seemed so far off and exotic from where I was. It seemed impossible to me to marry the two until I heard Rory play. And then it was... good Lord, I can hear, the old fellas in the corner of the pub in one hand, and I can hear, your Freddie Kings and your Otis Rushes and all this stuff, in the other side of it. And so it was this marrying of these two very different worlds that I found just magical.
Now, it says in your wiki page that you play solo. Sometimes you play with your guys some other times. Is that true?
That is true, yeah. And actually with this a couple of nights coming up at Fanatics, I'll be playing solo, which is my first time doing that there. It'll be great fun. But yeah, I grew up listening to a lot of acoustic guitar players and idolizing them in the same breath as the kind of electric heroes too. So acoustic music has always been a huge part of my life.
So I interviewed a fellow the other day, and Rick Vito, and he has 77 guitars.
Oh gosh!
Yes, he used to play with Fleetwood Mac. I mean, what is your guitar collection?
Well, it's not 77. I used to kind of want to chase that and the kind of collecting thing, but ultimately I'm not very good at it. I tend to, if something isn't serving a purpose, I'll move it on purely for the fact I feel guilty. I kind of give it a little personification, and I end up kind of feeling like I'm sorry for it, so it needs to go off to a new home.
So you're definitely not a hoarder.
No, not at all.
That's good.
I normally only kind of tour with 2 or 3, and then total is less than 20, I would have thought.
So what's the first? I like asking this question of everybody too. What's the first paid gig you have? Just sometimes it was my friend Mort's bar mitzvah.
I think it was playing guitar for a blues band for Dickie Best, Dave Moore, their blues band. Dickie owned a restaurant in the village I grew up in, and I think he's trying to start this first Friday of the month or something like that. There'd be a blues night, and so I think it was there, and he might have given me a bit of pocket money out of that. I think that would have been my first.
Well, how old were you? I mean, obviously you do this for a living, and I mean, how it fascinates me how musicians progress from playing in small clubs, maybe part-time, getting the jobs when they can, having a second job, and then supporting yourself full-time with gigs. I mean, when did that happen for you? You must have been a pretty young guy, right?
Yeah, I think it happened really from the get-go because I didn't really have any other options. I'm pretty rubbish at anything else, and so
rubbish at anything. I love that. I'm going to use that. I'm rubbish. I'm doing this because I'm a rubbish at everything else. I love that.
Yeah. I think once your choices are very limited, your path forward becomes quite obvious.
I'm going to ask Jim to introduce you. I can introduce you. Here's Davy Knowles, world down, comes from the Isle of Man, and he's here tonight because he tells me he is rubbish at everything else.
I'd say it's a pretty accurate way of introducing the evening.
You would have to get the tickets prepaid before you...
Yeah. I've never been much of a salesman. But
nor am I.
It's, I think it was just I've stumbled into it very luckily, and apart from having a couple of odd jobs as a teenager, being a waiter, the kind of usual stuff. I kind of worked hard at it by default, only really because I loved it so much. So it was all I did, and I think that kind of helped open up a lot of doors for me. Luckily,
yeah. This is such a common thread that I hear with musicians, is that you find something that you love, and you have to work hard. I mean, do you practice a lot?
Yeah, but I wouldn't even call it practice. Again, it's this idea of I play because I really love it, and I enjoy being a student of whatever I'm doing. I think that's an important attitude to maintain. The idea that there's always something new to learn, there's always something new to kind of unlock with it all. And I think that excitement spurs you on. But it's just the process of keep playing and enjoying what you're doing. And if you're not enjoying what you're doing, change tack. That's really what it's.
I have this expression: not everybody that plays the piano can make music. I mean, God gives some people a gift. Can you subscribe to that? Or do you believe that? Do you believe in that?
Bits of it, maybe. I don't know. I feel like you might have an inherent drive to do something, and that inherent drive kind of gets you fairly proficient at it. But I don't. I think anyone has the capability to do this. It's just whether or not you are so inspired to do so that you make it your life. I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people even I think it's inherent. It's like my daughter's a photographer. She's a very successful photographer and done stuff for New York Times and the Washington Post and whatever. But she's got an eye. She sees something that somebody else doesn't see, and that's sort of what I see with you musicians that are successful. You have a certain something that you do with your music that's different than everybody else's music. It just I don't know, it's this ethereal thing. We'll be right back to talk more after this. This section of the No Nonsense Roundtable is brought to you by, the No Nonsense Roundtable. You see, at the No Nonsense Roundtable, we do marketing for different organizations, and let me give you an example. Here's an ad that we did for the Rotary Sunshine Camp just recently, and it was voiced by Don Alhart.
It's a magical place for kids of all abilities.
At no charge, the Rochester Rotary Sunshine Camp has been serving children of all abilities for the last 100 years. Help us grow into the next 100 years. Go to sunshinecamp.org to learn more about how you can help.
Where kids have no barriers to fun.
The Rochester Rotary Sunshine Camp.
We do all sorts of things, mainly for smaller companies. So if you'd like to investigate the possibility of us doing some work for you, contact me at nononsenseroundtable.com. Let's talk about your lifestyle. I mean, you're on the road quite a bit, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. I try and be fairly sensible about it, but yeah.
What's the biggest venue you've played for?
Oh, gosh. I've done festivals about 40, 50,000.
Whoa.
I've done Red Rocks. That was pretty good, and those kinds of things. I've been lucky. Yeah. I don't know if those were my favorite gigs ever, but they were large.
Now, in your travels, tell me about somebody that you met and it either influenced you or was something you didn't expect, either good or bad. There has to be somebody in there that you have a story for.
I mean, yeah, running into Peter Frampton, I think, was pretty life-changing.
There you go.
He produced my second album.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and the biggest lesson I learned from Peter was just humility. I mean, here's a guy who has achieved what so many dream of and has reached the absolute pinnacle of things, and he has every right to assert himself, to kind of. I don't think anyone has the right to be unpleasant, but has the right to kind of see his place in the world as slightly elevated, maybe. And he doesn't at all. He's just such a lovely, lovely chap. I remember one day I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and we were at a coffee shop around the corner from my house, and a guy it was like a Monty Python skit, someone leaps out at a shrubbery, out of a shrubbery at him. Oh, Mr. Frampton, I'm a huge fan. I've followed you since The Herd, since Humble Pie, all of this stuff. And Peter's very gracious. Thank you. You're very kind. Thank you very much. All of this. And then the guy says, 30 Days in the Hole is my favorite song. And Peter again is like, very, very kind. Thank you very much. And we, the guy leaves and he leans into me and he says, for the last, effing time, I wasn't on that record. and I'm thinking in my head, the guy, Peter could have humiliated the man and said, oh, I wasn't on that. He would have been correct, but he would have been unkind. And instead, he was just very gracious, thank you so much, you're kind. And the man went away, thrilled at having met his hero. And Peter didn't hurt anyone. And it was just such a lovely little lesson in no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, just be gentle, just be kind. And I loved that.
Oh, that is just wonderful. That's a great story. I have the opposite of that story.
Oh no!
The baseball player Reggie Jackson. He's here signing autographs in Rochester. I don't mind telling this story, but this woman comes up to him with a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper, and they can't sign a blank piece of paper because you could put anything down there. You owe me $1 million, whatever. And he looks at her. He goes, "I can't do it." He starts yelling at her. It's like, oh yeah, I can't do that. It's like, I'm thinking, how small is your soul? Okay,
unnecessary.
This middle-aged lady, you just, So if Reggie, you did that, and if you're listening now, well, thank you. But you did do that. So
it's unnecessary. Yeah.
No, it's unnecessary. So you lived in L.A. for a while, huh?
I did, yeah. It was a bit of a culture shock. That was the first place I moved to.
To everybody.
I was 19 and I moved from a village of about 9 or 10 houses to Los Angeles. And that was, it was quite a shock to the system, really. Again, cushy, but, it was definitely different.
Yeah, the thing that's really kind of fascinating me is that you're in this island, by Scotland or whatever. So how do you get? I mean, that's quite a jump to go from there, and you can't go home very easily. So did you come right to the United States and spend time here, or how did this all work out for you?
Well, my careers advisor took one look at my exam results and he said a gap year would be good for you. Oh. And I moved to. I'd met my manager actually. He was managing a pop artist called Corinne Bailey Ray out of the UK, who did very well. And he said, "Well, come over to England, the mainland, and live with me for the gap year." And we ended up recording an album, which became the first album. We recorded it on and off on the Isle of Man. And a record label who were interested in another artist that studio had recorded came over and we showcased for them, despite them wanting to sign, the other artist. And it was a label from Seattle area. And they liked us more and they ended up signing the band randomly. And then we went over and we did South by Southwest. This was kind of at the end of the gap year. And we did South by Southwest. And then we got on a few support tours in the States. And then the label just said, hey, we're sick of paying for the transatlantic flights. There's a little place for you to stay in Los Angeles if you'd like. And I'm thinking, I'm 19. It's either live with my folks on the Isle of Man or move to California. And I'll give that a go, So it was a very cushy situation, very, very lucky.
So like this go around, how many performances are you going to have across, New York State or the Northeast? Or how far are you going? For how many days?
For this little run, yeah. I think it's only a week or so.
Really?
Pretty civilized, yeah.
And where are you staying now, or where are you living now?
I live in Chicago. I've been here for a really long time now.
Oh, okay. Do you like Italian food?
I mean, I like Chicago Italian food. I think Italian food and Chicago and kind of Italian food elsewhere in the world are two different things. Okay. But yeah, lovely.
I was trying to lead you with this because my name is Dominic Genova, so I'm Italian, and I make. And the other day I had. It's really a lot of fun. There was somebody else who was in here for a couple of days. Bobby Rush. You probably know Bobby Rush.
Oh yeah, yes.
So he was here for 2 days, like you're going to be here for 2 days. and I made him lunch at my house. I made some Italian food for him, and I was wondering, maybe when you're here, maybe I can make you a meal, but.
Oh my word!
But it's not going to be Chicago. It's going to. So.
Don't worry about it. I don't think I'm a big fan of the whole deep dish thing. It's not for me.
So let's talk a little bit about more you and your music. Now, when somebody asked, I asked once, I said, do you innovate, or do you listen to somebody else and try to copy them? Or, I mean, what's been your general style as you've been progressing in your career? I mean, do you adapt at all, or is pretty much, the way it is?
No, I like to be kind of constantly moving. I think because I'm constantly upset with my own abilities. But I think it's the people who I am huge fans of were always ones that took something and made something a bit different with it. Mark Knopfler being a great example. Huge Chet Atkins fan, but obviously doesn't go out there and play Maybelle, note for note every night. Same with Rory Gallagher, huge fan, but he does his own thing and he writes his own songs. I've always been huge into songwriting, and I've always kind of maintained that that's everything. That's the foundation of it all. So I think I wouldn't use innovate, because I don't think I'm changing the world in any kind of way, but I would say I do try and be as creative as I can in my endeavors to do something that feels like it's mine, rather than, hey, here's another one of these. Partly because I'm not very good at that. I feel like there are people out there, say in the trad blues world, who will go out there and play a Junior Wells track or an Albert King thing and do such an incredible job of it, and I'm sat there loving it, but I'm no good at that. I've never been a particularly good kind of note for note kind of person.
So do you read music, or not read music, or read music a little bit, or?
I can read it a little bit. I did a little project on mandolin with some Celtic old Manx folk music, where a lot of it isn't recorded, and so you have to take it from notation. So I can read it a little bit, but it's painfully slow.
We'll be right back after this. This section of the No Nonsense Roundtable is brought to you by Fanatics Pub and Blue Stage in Lima, New York. There's only a few tickets left for tonight's show. The band Houses of the Holy is a Led Zeppelin tribute band. Last night was a sold-out performance, and tonight there's only a few tickets left. I'll be at table 22. Get your tickets and come over and say hi. Great entertainment, great food, and only a short scoot down 390. Get your tickets at fanaticsPub.com, and you better hurry. Yeah, so apparently Sir Paul can't read music.
Sure, I could see that. Yeah,
and I have a fellow who's become a friend of mine. He was just he's being inducted into the Rochester Music Hall of Fame. His name is Scott Mayo. He says I look at the music, and he says I hear it in my head. I says, you have to be kidding me. He says it's like reading. He says He says every note of it. He says it just plays in my head, and that's got to be incredible. I mean, I couldn't even imagine that.
Oh, it was someone like Yo-Yo Ma, or that's a whole different kind of musicianship. I don't think the two have to be mutually exclusive, and I don't particularly subscribe to. There's two schools of thinking, right? There's one of if you're a classical musician, you're super stiff and you can't, move outside that. Or if you can't learn to read music, then you're more creative, and I don't agree with any of that stuff. I think it's on an individual basis.
Well, we have a very good technical college, Rochester Institute of Technology, and the president will tell you that the engineering students, a lot of them are wonderful musicians. There's something about how their brain is wired that they really appreciate, and the other thing is relaxing for them too.
Yeah.
Puts you in a sort of in a different place. Other than blues, rock music, whatever. Is there any other type of music that strikes your fancy?
Oh yeah, traditional music. Irish and Scottish Manx traditional music. I've always been a big fan of that. English folk music too. Some folks I mentioned earlier. But yeah, and John Renbourn, Pentangle, Davy Graham, stuff like that. So a lot of acoustic music. Obviously, the whole blues rock thing, but going back, into the Delta blues stuff and all those Alan Lomax field recordings, and I like some classical music. I try and be open to as much as possible, and if it moves you, it moves you, right? Yeah.
Here's an off-the-wall question. What are your hobbies?
I don't have time for those kinds of things. I feel like I'm very, very lucky. I'm a father of 3 little girls. So,
how wonderful! What are their ages?
They are 5, 2, and 6 months.
Oh, so that's wonderful. I have 2 daughters. I have 3 sisters and 2 daughters, and I like to say it's a lot more fun when you can go having a dinner and a drink with them. There's only so many tea parties you can have. It's nice, and then you get into discussions of philosophy and all this other stuff. But girls need their dads. That's
So my hobbies, whenever there is any time, it's spending it with them. And, that's everything.
Yeah, I had a boss of mine. I didn't quite, realize at the time. He said, I said, "Do you play golf?" He says, "No." He says, "Why would I want to spend 5 hours on a Saturday away from my family?" Okay. And plus I stink at golf.
What was it Winston Churchill said? It's a perfectly good way to ruin a perfectly good walk.
Well, like I said, I tell people I found cheaper ways of humiliating myself than playing golf. Wait till you meet me. I have no athletic ability whatsoever. It's just oh my Lord. So Jim's place. Now, have you played his place before? Or?
Oh yeah, lots of times.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good. You see, the thing with me with this blues thing, that's why I'm trying to help out Jim get some attention, is that this is this little jewel that he has down there in Lima.
Yeah.
And sometimes people in Rochester, especially when the weather gets bad and it's snowy and rain, it's icy and whatever, you think that Lima is like, on the other side of the planet, but it's not. It's just, 10 minutes down the road. And I'm trying to get some attention because to Jim's place, because it's just a jewel. And I have to tell you, honestly, I hadn't attended any of the events there until a fella I know and invited me there. I guess it was 6 or 8 months ago, and it's like, oh my Lord, look at that, man, that's really cool. And all the you get to meet people and you get to interrelate with the performers and whatever. So let's do a little retail here. Retail meaning that you have to have a web page and you sell CDs for a living, or what. So what? Yeah. So let's talk about how to get some attention for you. So go ahead at it. There you go.
All of the interweb stuff. I'm Davy Knowles, DavyKnowles.com. And then all of the Facebook, Instagram. I try to avoid TikTok if I can. But yeah, all of the usual stuff just under my name, really.
And so I imagine you have some. You have albums, right?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the albums you have.
Oh gosh, how many studio was there? 5 or 6. We're just recording a new one right now. And then I came out with an all acoustic album last year.
Oh, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah, really, really proud of that. And then really, the idea, with these acoustic shows I've been doing is a good mix of the new stuff and the old stuff. So it's not just all kind of mopey, sad acoustic songs. There's some raucousness to it as well. So yeah, it's.
Well,
I try to keep things.
They call it blues for a reason, right? I mean,
yeah, but there's all sorts of stuff that creeps in.
Well, I didn't realize that, there's the rock blues and there's, I guess the traditional blues and sort of, it's all under the same umbrella. But, this Celtic blues sounds really good. Well, you're going to be here for, basically it's for St. Patrick's Day too. It's the 16th because, it's St. Patrick's Day Eve, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dye the beer green and yeah.
So with that, we're just about out of time, believe it or not. It's been delightful having you on the show. Now, when you're here, will you have CDs and whatever for people?
Yeah, all that good stuff. Yeah.
And you said you're going to be playing alone, right?
Yeah. It's just a solo show, which is fun. I get to talk about how some of these songs were born, and
I love that.
All that stuff too. Yeah, it's good fun.
And you say you've written most of these yourself, right?
Oh yeah. I think there's only one or two covers in there. I'll try and do, but songwriting's a big focus for me.
Well, let me ask you a question about that before we go too. Is there a particular time that you sit down in a room and just stare out a window and just think, or is it driving down the road? How do you come up with? Or it's like sometimes 3 o'clock in the morning I wake up and I go, whatever. How does that creative process work with you? I think different people work differently.
Absolutely, and for me, I try and collect stuff constantly. So I'm always kind of making silly recordings in my phone or jotting stuff down, and then it ends up like a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. Like this kind of lyric idea fits the mood of this kind of terrible scratchy recording I made, and you try and play join up there. And then sometimes, more rarely, something will pop out kind of almost as a whole, that this is one idea. But yeah, normally it's kind of like have several irons in the fire at all times.
Yeah, I admire that. I have to tell you, that's the creative process. No matter what you do, whether it's it's anything, art, music, whatever, or writing, the creative process is a gift that some people have, and you leave something. The other thing is you leave something here that wasn't there before you.
It's a nice idea. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little something here. I think creation's still going on. I really do. I think you leave a place with something that wasn't here before, and whatever. So, anyway, well, you didn't know you were going to have a conversation about philosophy and theology.
That's all right.
Well, I'm looking forward to meeting you, and like I said, and being on my show comes with a free meal.
I will take you up on it. Thank you.
And Bobby Rush had one, and he's still alive, so it worked out well. and it hasn't gotten salmonella or whatever it is. So it's been delightful talking to you. And with that, everybody, it's the No Nonsense Roundtable. Same time, same place, 10 o'clock next Saturday.
Thanks for listening. Tune in every weekend from 10 to 11 on News Radio Wham 1180. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll make more.